First up, we have the sophomore album from Fourth Dominion with Diana's Day. This Rochester, New York band really combines the best elements of goth rock, post-punk, and a little bit of new wave of British heavy metal thrown in there. I hear as much anathema and sentenced in this band as I do, say, a band like Publicis UK or The Smiths, or even Hole. This is a very fascinating but dark look at mental health, trauma, and the cathartic ways that we deal with all those things. It really does explore trauma in a way that I wish more bands would do, but I'm so thankful that Fourth Dominion does that for us. Add that with some excellent production and songwriting value, and you have something that is metal adjacent, and not necessarily the heaviest thing you'll hear all year, but it is very, very heavy thematically. And if you're looking for something like that, you should give this album a shot. Up next is the sophomore album from The Mantle with Violent Cosmic Fortune, and this is one of the best progressive death metal albums of 2024, if not the best, and one of my favorite albums of 2024 so far. Max Gorlick, Asher Bank, and Sky Moon have put out one of the best progressive death metal albums I've heard in a very, very long time. If you were originally familiar with the band, you know they started off as an instrumental duo. Now the band is a progressive death metal trio, and it's the best thing that they could have done. I hear elements of the glory days of Opeth and the more progressive and experimental sides of Edge of Sanity. If that's something you're looking for, you are going to love this album. And of course, layer all that on top with the absolutely amazing chops that all three of these guys bring. There's a lot of shredding, a lot of wanking, but I wouldn't have it any other way. This is some fantastic stuff from The Mantle, and if you want to hear the best progressive death metal of 2024, at least so far, give this one a shot. Up next is the third album from Mr. Misery with their self-titled album. And this is my first foray into the band, and I really, really enjoy what they're doing here. Everything from horror metal, modern metal, metalcore, glam, and so much more is thrown into here. This is the most modern metal the band has done so far, but I really, really enjoy what they're doing here. The production is pristine, the songwriting is catchy, and they know how to trim the fat. It's everything that you could be looking for in this particular style, with that great vampiric thematic sound over top of it. And if you're just looking for something that's fun, catchy, and incorporates so much of the modern day while still be able to doing a little bit of a throwback, you should check out Mr. Misery. And first up for what I missed is A Day in Venice with A Man Without a Name. The fourth album from this Italian band really explores goth rock and post-rock and alternative rock, although not like Fourth Dominion, which I talked about earlier in my reviews. But this has more of a mix of something like The Gathering, mixed in with some 80s synth and soundtrack kind of feel, and some very dark charm on top of all of it. It's a bit of an uneasy listening experience, but I do believe that was done by design. The production is very raw, especially in the guitar, which kind of almost has nearly a black metal guitar tone to it, thrown on top of some goth rock and post-punk on top of that. It's not going to be for everybody, but if you want something that sounds like the early day albums from The Gathering, mixed in with some 80s flair, you should give this one a shot. Next up, we have the self-titled debut from Category 7. This brand new group features past and present members of Adrenaline Mob, Armored Saint, Exodus, Overkill, and more. And I thoroughly enjoy everything that's going on with this album. It has the right amount of old school thrash, it has the right amount of modern metal, it has the right amount of everything that I'm looking for in their sound. Yeah, 80s thrash, 90s groove, some modern metal techniques, all while sounding absolutely authentic. And you can't tell me after 40 plus years John Bush still isn't one of the best singers to come out of the 80s. The man can sing a chorus like no other, and I'm so excited this album came to fruition, and it makes me so excited to see what the band is going to be all about with their sophomore album. But until then, check out the self-titled debut from Category 7 if you want something that has that thrash groove modern feel. Next up is Curse Upon a Prayer with The Worship, Orthoprax Satanism. And this is another recommendation from Justin of the Harsh Vocals podcast. Thank you very, very much, and make sure to check out that podcast for the more extreme side of things. But until then, Curse Upon a Prayer does the perfect mix of satanic black metal while making it so soothing and melodic at the same time. It feels like a succubus that's kind of luring you in if you like a particular style of black metal, before they drag you down to the underworld. The production is very smooth and pristine, especially for the style. And of course, the lyrical content just fits like a glove. It's not going to be the most technical or brutal album that you hear in 2024. This is just some really smooth satanic black metal. And if you're looking for something that feels like more of a mainstream version of the Antichrist Imperium, you should give this one a proper listen and see if it's for you. Next up, we have Powerwolf with Wake Up the Wicked. And what can I say? Powerwolf is gonna Powerwolf at this point, and they don't need to do anything else. They found their niche, and they do it so very, very well. It's that gothic tinged power metal that has those really dark religious overtones to it, you know, like werewolves acting as religious figures, as they've often done with Powerwolf. That's who they are, it's what they do, and no one does it better. With a killer production style, and of course that songwriting that is so patented to them, this is everything that you want in a Powerwolf album. If you're looking for them to do a pop album or a grindcore album, this isn't going to be for you. But if you just want to know that something's safe in the world and Powerwolf is still putting out the great solid stuff that they do, check out Wake Up for the Wicked. If you want that, you won't be disappointed. Next up is the one-man project Rot with Enchantment, and coming straight out of India, this is some of the best black gaze post-black metal that I've heard all year. I dare say this is the black gaze post-black metal album of the year. All you have to do is listen to it. The songs are filled with such emotion that it really feels like an odd mix of getting your heartstrings pulled and your gut punched at the same time, because those melodic moments are so intriguing, but it also hits you so hard with the production, and especially the lyrical style that's going on at the same time. This is what I love about the genre, and the perfect example of how to get someone into black gaze or post-black metal. If this sounds like it's for you, and if you want to hear the best of this genre, give the brand new album from Rot a proper listen. Up next is Solstium with their debut album, Morgoth, and this is straight up for me. It is death doom and epic metal combined. If you're looking for something that wants to be combined with November's Doom, Candlemass, and even some Bolt Thrower thrown in, you need to check out this album. It has that perfect, raw 90s feel of death doom, but it also has the songwriting style of something like Bolt Thrower, where it feels like it's not too fast, not too slow, just right in the middle. And then when they get into the more epic metal side, you really hear the Candlemass influence on top of that, and of course, the death doom of it all with November's Doom. I can't speak enough good things about this. It's a little bit raw for some people, but I think you can overlook that with everything that's going on in the songwriting. And if it sounds intriguing to you at all, go check it out right now. And finally today we have Tears of Tragedy with Wonder Arts, and this is the most symphonic power metal, melodic power metal album that you're probably going to hear in 2024. In a time where it feels like every symphonic power metal band is trying to be Amaranth, Tears of Tragedy is going more in the Versailles route, which really fits them so very, very well. It's got the over-the-top symphonics, it's got that pure power metal sound, and it's super melodic. You write that with some fantastic songwriting and a production style that fits so perfectly for the sound and really feels like a gut punch to the system. It's everything that you want for it. It feels dark, it feels tragic, no pun intended. It's just everything that you want in this sound. If you love Versailles, you're gonna love Tears of Tragedy. Trust me on this one. First up, we have And So I Watch You From Afar with Megafauna. This is the band's 7th album, and it really does feel like a return album. It feels like a revival album for the band. And I also mean that for me personally as well too, as it's gotten me back into the band. It feels like there's a new fire that's been lit underneath the band, and I do kind of blame it on the pandemic, because it feels like it revitalized the band, and they figured out what makes the band work so great. It's got the great heavy moments at times, it gets experimental, it gets jazzy, it gets left of center, but they also know how to stay catchy, especially as an instrumental band. Of course, everything that you love about the band, the instrumental post-rock, the progressive rock, the art rock style, is here, just done with a new fire. And I'm so happy to see it, because this is one of the first bands that I ever did any kind of review for once I started, and it's so great to see that 13 years later, the band is still rocking on. Next up, we have The Aphelion with Nascence. This is the sophomore album from this Ottawa, Canada prog band, and it has so much of what I love about prog metal. 2024 has been a great year for prog, and it's great to see this band putting out an album like this, as it does get as heavy as Opeth, it gets as experimental as Leprous, it gets as much balance as a band like Haken, and it also has the emotional balance of a band like Pain of Salvation. And it can even get more experimental on the sides of bands like Shining, or just having that great brass and woodwind section that you would hear in something like Rivers of Nile, or even Niavlis these days. The production is very rich, and the songwriting is very, very inspired. And the lyrics will truly hit home for a lot of people. I know it does for me. It may go under the radar for a lot of people, but that's why I'm here. I hope you give this one a shot and discover one of the best prog metal albums of 2024. Next up, we have Hammerfall with Avenge the Fallen. Now, their previous album, Hammer of Dawn, is one of my favorite Hammerfall albums. I love how dark it gets, especially for their style of heavy metal and power metal. This one feels a little bit more of a return to fall, and say it with me, Hammerfall is gonna Hammerfall. And in 2024, when we live in such turbulent times, I'm glad there is a band like Hammerfall that is putting out something that's consistent. You know what the sound's gonna be, it's always gonna be fun, it's always going to be catchy, it's always going to be heavy, it's always going to be what Hammerfall does, just updated enough for 2024. And when we live in these turbulent times, I'm just so happy that Hammerfall has put out another fantastic album, even if it doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. The band doesn't have to at this point. They just need to keep putting out fantastic music, and they have. And in 2024, that's all I could ever ask for. And finally, for brand new stuff out today is the band Siamese with Elements. Now, I've been a fan of these guys ever since the very first album, back when they were known as Siamese Fighting Fish, and I've been keeping up with them ever since, and seeing them go into the more modern metal route, I think was absolutely the right choice for them. Of course, they still have all the chops in the world, and you can hear that throughout this particular album, but they also know how to make it modern, they know how to make it punchy, they know how to make it for a more modern mainstream crowd, and I can't blame them for that because they know how to write some of the catchiest music. And especially in 2024, when modern metal is becoming bigger and bigger, Siamese is proven that they are one of the biggest bands doing this kind of style, and it's so cool to see them being able to pull all this off. But yeah, if you're looking for modern metal that does have a lot of progressive chops to it, you really need to give this one a shot. It is one of the best albums in modern rock, modern metal in 2024. And now for some stuff I've missed along the way, starting with Dwell in Doom with Ruins of the Divine. And this has all the potential in the world of being one of my favorite doom metal albums of 2024. This project is absolutely insane. They've written 8 albums in 6 years, and this might be the best that they've done so far. Now, to describe them, it has the gothic doom side of Woods of Ypres, especially vocally, but they also incorporate other stuff like My Dying Bride and Sentenced and Paradise Lost for some good measure. You mix that up with a very depressing but full production value and a songwriting style that is going to make you cry. This is my kind of doom metal, and one of the best gothic doom metal albums of 2024. Just check it out for yourself and understand why. Next up, we have Mourner's Lament with A Grave Farewell. This sophomore album from Chile is another fantastic slab of gothic doom metal, but unlike the one that I just got done talking about, this is much more in that gothic funeral doom metal style that I love so very, very much. If you're looking for a band that incorporates styles of Shape of Despair, November, and Saturnus, this is the band for you. Mix that up with a just raw enough but clear production style and a songwriting style that is just absolutely heartbreaking from start to finish. Everything about this is my kind of funeral doom metal, and if you're into that style, you are gonna love what Mourner's Lament is all about. Next up, we have Space Corps with Shapeshifter, and this is arguably the most brutal album I'll be talking about this week. The band really started getting over in 2022 with the release of their debut EP, but now it's time for their full LP, and this was everything that I was hoping the band was gonna do. It's a nice, healthy mix of deathcore, death metal, tech death, and very atmospheric moments. So imagine a band like The Faceless mixing it up with Carnifex, mixing it up with the Contortionist Abortionist, and you have Space Corps. All 6 original songs on here feel otherworldly in its atmosphere, and they know how to pummel you along the way. Also, if that's not enough for you, they end the album with Metallica's For Whom the Bell Tolls, and I guarantee you'll never hear another version like this. If it sounds intriguing to you at all, I implore you to give this one a shot. I think it's well worth your time. Next up, we have Awake in Providence with I Write to You, My Darling Decay. Another sophomore album here, this time coming from the Staten Island band, and this is the best version of symphonic deathcore I've ever heard. While I hear mixes of bands like Opeth and Of Sulfur here, this is literally what it sounds like if Flesh God Apocalypse was a deathcore band instead of a symphonic death metal band, and I love everything about it. It is absolutely pummeling when it needs to, so operatic in the right moments. It is so filled with progressive moments and such great atmosphere through all of it. The production style is so crisp and pristine, and the songwriting style, again, if you love what bands like Opeth and Of Sulfur and Flesh God Apocalypse do, this is probably my favorite symphonic deathcore album of 2024. And I'm not usually a deathcore fan. You need to incorporate something like this to it to get my attention, and they very much have so. Next up is Wall of Palemhor with Sing and Bleed. This is another sophomore album. This week just seems to be chock full of sophomore albums, but rather than covering a lot of ground that I already have this year, and especially this week, this is more in the melodic death metal and metalcore styles, which I find very intriguing. I hear as much bands like At the Gates and Carcass and In Flames as I do a band like Ringworm or Shadows Fall or Unearth. It's a nice healthy combination of both sides and really focuses on the heaviest aspects of both genres, which I truly appreciate. While it can get melodic, it is much more focused on the heavy side of it all, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. I can only imagine what the pits will be like for a band like this live. Seriously, if you love the heavy, and I mean the heavy sides of melodic death metal and metalcore, you need to check this album out. And finally today, we have Wraithfire with Of Fell Peaks and Haunted Chasms. The lone black metal album that I have this week, which is very strange considering how much black metal I've covered this year, is a debut album from a one-man UK band that really combines the best of third wave black metal in the likes of Latter Day Emperor, Dissection, and Demi Borgir. It's a nice healthy mix of that third wave black metal sound and just the tiniest bit of mellow black as well. Give it a very raw mid to late 90s production style, and it feels like it was made right in 1997 and unearthed in 2024. It's done with everything that you love about the style, and it's just what the Dark Lord ordered for you. Seriously, if you want to throw back in 2024 to the great style of third wave black metal, you cannot do better than this album in 2024. First up is an Album of the Year contender. It is Dark Tranquillity with End Time Signals. And this band has really been through the ringer as of late, especially in the past 10-15 years with so many different lineup changes. Only 2 of the original members are still intact. But with that comes new life into the band, and End Time Signals brings in some of the most fire the band has ever had. Seriously, in a lot of Dark Tranquillity albums, especially of the 21st century, there's a couple fast songs, but it's mainly moody mellow death, which I love. This album brings the fast, the slow, the medium, everything that you love about Dark Tranquillity into one album. If you love the old school stuff, the new school stuff, and everything in between, this is that album, but it is more revitalized than ever before, proving that Dark Tranquillity, even after 30 plus years of existence, is here to stay and putting out some of the best metal death you will ever hear. Up next is Thermality with The Final Hours. This is a sophomore album from the Swedish melodeath band, and it comes out only a year and a half after their debut album. But the band has really been able to focus in on their sound, really refining what they are about, and creating some excellent melodeath in the process. This will remind you of bands like Dark Tranquillity and In Flames in their biggest moments, but you will also hear an underlying layer of second wave metalcore, which is like that 2000s metalcore, so you might hear little moments of bands like Trivium or Bullet for My Valentine thrown in there just to give it a little more pop than it normally would. But every song is just as catchy and as anthemic as the previous, and everything about this album just really hits the mold for me. And if you grew up in that 2000s melodeath metalcore sound, this is an album for you, but a nice, refreshing take in 2024. Up next is the band Trench with Between Inverted Worlds. Now, Canada is pretty much just known for its prog rock and tech death at this point, if you follow stereotypes, but there is such a rich Canadian hardcore scene that's going on, and Trench is right in the middle of that. With their sophomore album, the band expands even more on their hardcore sound, really bringing in a weird mixture of Comeback Kid and Cult of Luna. That's right, you heard me right. It incorporates groove metal, industrial, and post-metal into their hardcore roots. It is absolutely insane to listen to, and it won't be for everybody. But if you're looking for something that's very deep, dense, and prolific, this, in the hardcore realm, is one of the most standout albums in 2024, and it is such a refreshing take on the genre. And finally, for brand new stuff out today, is the debut LP from the Atlanta metallic hardcore band Yosemite in Black with The Pursuit Of. Now, this is pure, unadulterated, heavy metallic hardcore, yet it does have some great groovin' metalcore moments that also separate it, so it's not just completely getting pummeled in the face, sometimes you're getting boot stomped at the same time. This feels like the perfect pit album. If I was a hardcore kid and I did my Karate Kid, this would be the perfect soundtrack in 2024. It is so heavy. It has metal, hardcore, everything mixed together, so very, very catchy. I hear moments of bands like Ringworm. I hear moments of bands like Lamb of God and Knocked Loose. And if that sounds like something that would be up your alley, seriously, give this one a shot. And now for some stuff I missed along the way, starting with Destruction of Orion, with the debut album, Decreasing Brightness. And no, this has nothing to do with turning down the brightness on your Black Mirror. This is an album that is fully about the last moments of life before one passes away, and each track has a different story to tell when it comes to that. Tina Spazova has created some of the best old school death doom, funeral doom, and raw atmospheric doom I've heard in 2024. This is raw, unadulterated funeral doom at its lowest. It is dark, it is sad, it is gut-punching, it is soul-draining, and everything that I love about it. It has a very raw, atmospheric feel behind it in the production style, which might be a turnoff for some people, but for me, I think it really fills up the atmosphere and makes it feel even colder. And if you're looking for some serious, fantastic funeral doom in 2024, this is one of the best and one of the most heartbreaking. Next up is Grot Strigoi with The Prolific Silence, and this is one of the most empty albums I've heard in 2024. And I don't mean that in the sense that it has nothing to say or that it's bland and boring. I mean this album literally feels like it sucks you into the void, and it doesn't let up until it is finished. This is the fourth album from the Scottish black metal duo, and it is easily their best. Pure, absolutely fantastic black metal, transcendental atmosphere throughout the entire thing, and such terrifying darkness. It just makes for the perfect blend of depressive black metal. If you're looking for some heartbreaking black metal that has a dark message and has some of the most creative sounds that you're gonna hear in the subgenre, with a production style that does not sound like 90s mayhem, you really need to give this one a shot. Next up is the debut album from the German band known as Machika with Mochari. And if you're looking for the German equivalent to a band known as Svalbard, this is for you. It has everything that you do love about Svalbard. Very meaningful, passionate vocal delivery, absolutely super catchy riffs, that weird but such enticing blend of post-black metal, hardcore, and punk. But what Machika does more than Svalbard is really focus on the post-black, black gaze side. Whereas Svalbard focuses more on the post side of it all, Machika is much more on the black metal side. And if that was the one thing that turned you off from Svalbard, you need to check this one out because it captures everything that you should love about a band like that, but just so much darker in its black metal overtones. Next up, we have Parashine with their debut album, Calibration. And they really did, sorry for the pun, calibrate their sound with this debut album. It is so meticulously perfect when it comes to melodic metal, heavy metal, dark metal, and just the greatest sense of pop rock, just mixed in with all the darkness as well. This is a Finnish band that really knows how to make something memorable, catchy, and very rewarding with every repeat listen. The dark, relatable lyrics and the catchy riffs catch me immediately. And of course, being from Finland, they know the importance of the melancholic and melodic sides to the metal country that they are known for. If you're looking for a band that kind of has the sound of a band I mentioned last year known as Abandon All, but you're also looking for the vocal delivery of a band who put out a fantastic album this year like Lutharo, this is an album that you must get. It is such a refreshing take on melodic dark metal in 2024. And finally today, we have Tides of Chaos with Crossing the Threshold. Another debut album this week, this time coming from a one-man Norwegian project, and wow, this is some of the best melodic blackened death metal that I've heard in 2024. It's such a refreshing take on the melodic death metal, the melodic black metal, the blackened death metal, all of it combined to create something that's very reminiscent of what you know, but done in such a different way that sounds so refreshing. If you're looking for a band that mixes something like Rotting Christ, early Borknagar, Behemoth, and Belphegor, this is an album that you need to check out. It's a little bit on the raw side, but done just perfectly enough. The songwriting is fantastic from start to finish, and that album experience is such a rush if you love this style. Seriously, if you love your melodic and blackened death metal, you need Tides of Chaos. First up this week is the sophomore album from All For Metal with Gods of Metal, Year of the Dragon. Now this is everything that you're looking for if you're looking for the heavy metal, power metal, modern metal, and just something that's really, really fun. This takes everything that the band worked on with their debut album and doubled down on the parts that really work for the band. Every single song is catchy, it's heavy in the right spots, it's poppy and catchy in all the others. It's just fun to listen to from start to finish. Think of a band like Sabaton, like Powerwolf, but doing their own style behind all of it. And all of these songs were designed for the live experience, so if you're enjoying what you hear on record, it's gonna sound even better in the live experience. Seriously, you need something fun at this point in 2024, especially if you're in the US, so give this one a shot. Next up is Alleviate with an album I think is pronounced Demons. If I'm wrong, please let me know. Bands, you need to stop doing the thing where you take out the vowels. But that said, I really do enjoy this album. It is layered in post-hardcore, metalcore, modern metal, but it has its own distinct feel behind it because this is a supergroup sorts where it features prominent members of the post-hardcore, metalcore, deathcore scene all mixed together to create something that's very captivating and intriguing from start to finish. The whole album feels this way, and I really appreciate it when a band puts together an album from start to finish still in 2024 and has purpose behind all of it. This isn't going to be for everybody who checks out my reviews, but if you dig the stuff that sounds like the early 2000s updated for 2024, give this one a shot. Next up, we have Carmeria with Tragedy d'Amour. Now, this is another sophomore album I'm talking about this week, but this time coming from Australia, and it's that perfect blend of symphonic goth rock. Basically, if you listen to the podcast, this is made for the Metal Fairy. This is that 2000s symphonic and Finnish goth rock sound, but done from an Australian band and incorporating their own little flavors into it. This is absolutely my kind of stuff as well, too. Really takes me back to the late 90s and early 2000s, but it is updated it just enough for 2024. So if you're looking for the likes of To Die For and Him and Sentenced and all those great bands that really congregated around that time, but you want to hear a refreshing take on it, seriously, check out Carmeria. Next up, we have Demiser with Slave to the Scythe. And wouldn't you know it, this is another sophomore album, but this time coming from South Carolina. And it is some of the most pure blackened speed metal I've heard in 2024. Of course, when you have so many bands like Wraith and Midnight who have put out such fantastic blackened speed this year, I'm so glad Demiser has come in and did their own spin on it because it feels like it takes everything to a new level. It makes everything faster, it makes everything heavier, angrier, it feels just that tad more evil, and everything in between. It's no wonder these guys got signed to Metal Blade. They are just a perfect band for that label. While it's not reinventing the wheel, it just turns up the notch on everything you expect from this level and shows how it really should be done. And if you're looking for some of the best black and speed metal of 2024, check out Demiser. Up next is Flesh God Apocalypse with Opera, and wow, this is going to be really hard to keep under a minute for the YouTube Shorts version, but needless to say, this is Album of the Year material. It may be my Album of the Year, but it's too early to say. This is the perfect symphonic death metal album. It comes from pure tragedy coming from Francesco and his near-death experience rock climbing, and you can just hear his power and struggle to come back to life after everything that happened, and he came out with the best Flesh God album to date. I did not know if it was going to be possible for them to beat Villano, but they certainly did. And of course, Veronica has stepped up and is doing all of the clean vocals now in the band, not just the operatic. So it feels like Francesco and Veronica are the real stars of the band now. And if you like what they do with their chemistry, and if you like their blend of symphonic death metal, this is the best symphonic death metal of 2024. Up next is My Fictions with Touch of Glass, and the return LP from this Massachusetts band shows them at their most insane. This is the most post-hardcore album I've heard this year, but also with that perfect blend of first wave metalcore. No, I'm not talking about Killswitch Engage and Shadows Fall, I'm talking about things like Converge, and it just mashes both of these up perfectly, and it just makes it so heavy, so dramatic, so emotional, that you feel everything from start to finish. Whether it feels like you want to go into the pit or you just want to have yourself a good cry, everything in between. This album really goes for the jugular, and I appreciate that so very, very much. I need albums like this in my life. It just hits that certain scratch, and I thank My Fictions for putting this together, and I'm so glad they've come back. Next up, we have Paralydium with Universe Calls, and this is another fantastic display of prog metal in 2024, although this is much more on the traditional prog metal side, something you would probably hear in the late 90s, early 2000s style of prog metal. And wouldn't you know it features a couple past and present members of the band Dynasty, and instead of sounding like Dynasty, they really start to inhabit a lot of bands like Seventh Wonder, Evergrey, Symphony X. It's kind of a dark style of progressive metal, which was very huge in the late 90s and early 2000s, and very, very much in my wheelhouse. Yet all of that was some fantastic production and a songwriting style that really takes you back but feels modern enough. This is my kind of prog, and if you're in that line of view, you will love what Paralydium is all about. And finally, for brand new stuff out today is Zeal and Ardor with their brand new album, Grief. And this is the most diverse album the band has ever put out. If you're looking for the old school Devil is Fine or self-titled Zeal and Ardor, that no longer exists in the band. Although it could come back, but it is not right now. Manuel has decided to let the entire band be able to write for the band, and it really does feel like a band-focused album. Is there black metal? Yes. Is there experimentation? Oh yeah. But there's so much more to the album. Everything from current day blues rock to what sounds like Phantom Moss meets Mr. Bungle. It is a very Mike Patton song, and everything in between. Everything that I love about this album, I love. But I will be honest, there are moments of this album I do not dig at all. I'll leave it to you to listen to it and figure out what those are. But if you want to hear the next continuation of Zeal and Ardor, it's here for your listening pleasure. And now on to everything I missed along the way. Only 2 albums this week. First, starting off with In Memoriam with Rosewater Black. And this is my kind of melodeath. Straight out of Australia. It is some of the most dark, crushing melodeath I've heard in quite some time. It is that blend of Australian melodeath and progressive death metal. If you really like the likes of Bellicor, you're gonna find something to truly appreciate about In Memoriam. The lyrics are gonna tear you apart, and it gut punches you with the music that matches it so perfectly. I know not everyone wants to be sad, but this is a sad album that feels like such a cathartic feeling. And I need that kind of stuff in my life, and you might as well. And honestly, I could see this fitting into some funeral doom playlists if you don't mind that the music is about twice or 3 times the speed of funeral doom. That of course is a joke. But of course, if you want something that will bring you down to its lowest, give this album a spin. It is more than worth your time. And finally today we end with a debut album from the band Chaos with By the Moon and the Stars. This is a Canadian melodeath band that really focuses in on the thrashier side of melodeath. So imagine the likes of At the Gates, particular eras of Carcass, and of course, their biggest influence without a question is Kalma. It is just that perfect blend of the thrashier side of melodeath with their own little bits and spices to make them stand out amongst the crowd. And the production value really does feel like it's transformed you back into 1996. It is raw, it is unadulterated, but it fits so perfect for the music on hand and really gives it that old school feel, but it was done in 2024. And if you're looking for something that really harkens back to those glory days of the early day melodeath, but done in 2024, listen to the new era of thrashy melodeath with Chaos. First is Emiensis with Reclamation Part 2, and this is technically the second half of a double album, so going forward I will be considering Reclamation to just be one album. Hint hint, nudge nudge for the top 100 albums. But in the second half of this album, you hear so much of what you enjoyed about Part 1, their progressive and atmospheric black metal side, really, but easily. This is a darker side of the band on this particular side of the album. It hits more into the black metal area. It is much closer to the early day stuff that they used to do, but it still fits so perfectly with what they're doing now. And wouldn't you know it, Lars from Borknagar even lends his vocals on a track, really making this part of the album stand out so much more. If you love post-black, if you love progressive black, if you love atmospheric black metal, and all of that combined, Emiensis is not only one of the best bands to come out of Minnesota, but one of the best black metal bands in 2024. Check it out. Next, we have Ancients with their return album, Beyond the Reach of the Sun. Now, it's been 8 years since the band has put out their previous album, and the band has gone through a bit of a change musically. While they still have all those hints of bands like Opeth and Enslaved, and even a band like Burst, you start to hear more of the sludgy side of this band coming through. Much more of, say, Alice in Chains or Mastodon is really coming through on here, mixed in with the more extreme sides, and it feels like a perfect match. The dynamics on this album is absolutely insane. Whether you're looking for something a little bit more mainstream or a little more extreme, it's all here in strides. And it still sounds like Ancients. It's great to see the band back, and arguably, they're at their strongest form to date. Up next is the band Elend with an album title I'm so sorry I'm gonna butcher, Tabringren. This is the 5th album from this Austrian black gaze band, and it's everything that I love about the genre. It is the post-black, it is the black gaze, it is the atmospheric black metal, but with one key exception. It has excellent production. I am so used to hearing albums come out in this genre that sounds like it was recorded on Fisher-Price recording material back in the early 90s. This is not that album. Somehow they can still get that dark mystique feel, making it feel very dark, very cold, but with such a gripping and emotional side to them, filled with excellent production, making you really care so much more about an album like this. It's seriously one of the best in the black gaze genre that I've heard in 2024, and if that has been your problem for not checking out the genre because of the production, give this one a shot. It is easily one of the best albums in the genre in 2024. Up next is the band Nails with their return album, Every Bridge Burning. Another band that has taken 8 years to come back, but they also have a new lineup and unleash some of their best work to date. Of course, Nails isn't without their controversy, but it seems like in 2024, they have their stuff together this time, which I truly appreciate. And with that, they have made some of their most humbling music that they've made in their discography. At only 18 minutes, they hit everything that you're looking for when it comes to grindcore, power metalcore violence, hardcore, and more. It's everything you love about the band, but just a little bit more anger and a little more refined. And at only 18 minutes, you're doing yourself a disservice by at least not checking it out. You have worse ways to spend a little under 20 minutes. If you're looking for something that is so good in the grindcore territory in 2024, give Nails a shot. Up next is, Winter Sun with Time 2. And what can I say here? Do I go into the controversy? Do I go into what's been happening over the past 12 years? No. I do believe that Winter Sun, while maybe not winning back everyone that has left the flock over the years, has shown that they are making quality music of the symphonic melodeath that we've always loved them for. 6 tracks, 48 minutes, 2 of them being instrumentals, which I can see some people checking out for. The 4 true Winter Sun tracks on this album are everything that you love the band for. It may not be the most mesmerizing, genre-changing, life-defying moments of Winter Sun, but it is exceptionally well made, excellent production, and Yari does know how to make arrangements and dynamics like no one else. I'm gracious to have gotten a promo copy to be able to check out this album. I will say for now, I do appreciate that Winter Sun is back, and just back to making music again, and I really hope that that will continue in the future. Now, starting off with the albums I missed, starting with Against the Seasons with If the Oceans Could Sing. This is a brand new discovery for me, and I missed it by almost 3 months. That's why the section is called What I Missed. Anyways, this is a one-man Polish band that blends 2 of my favorite bands together, Eglock and Woods of Ypres. This is everything I love about the atmospheric, folky, and blackened sides of Eglock mixing with the haunting, doomy, and occasionally blackened sides of Woods melded together to create an album that feels like it was written for me. There's not a lot of bands attempting this genre, so I appreciate it when a band does. And I also do appreciate that there is an Eglock and Woods cover on here as well, mixed in with the original music, so you can really see where the influences come from. But it fits together so very, very well, and if you love Eglock and Woods as much as I do, you're doing yourself a disservice by going any longer without checking this one out. Up next, I have Dampf with No Angels Alive. This sophomore album from this supergroup is just a perfect approach to modern metal, power rock, goth rock, and a lot of the bands that decided to become from a symphonic band into that modern metal sound. Although this is done with another key exception that you don't hear from a lot of other bands, authenticity. This was their idea from the beginning, and it just fits so perfectly. Even when it gets faster, whether it gets slower, it feels like they really know what they're doing here, but of course their bread and butter is the tempo stompers of that mid-level section. Just those stadium anthems that just fit so perfectly with their sound. And if you like the modern metal approach from people who have come from so many great power metal, symphonic metal, and goth bands, you need to give this one a shot and see how authenticity truly matters. Next up is Eye Eater with Alienate. This is a debut album from a New Zealand band that really feels like if the Contortionist stuck with Exoplanet rather than expanding the more proggy side that they started to do with albums like Language, even though there's still some moments that really do still have that sound, but really focusing in on that progressive deathcore sound. And I know a lot of people would be clamoring for something like that. Of course, it does get into proggy moments, it gets into more subdued and mellow moments as well, but the heavy sections are some of the most brutal sections you're gonna hear in this kind of genre in 2024. Of course, this won't be for everyone, but if you do find this combination of chocolate and peanut butter to be amazing like I do, and you enjoy the likes of the Contortionist and Between the Buried and Me, and the more dynamic sides that deathcore bands are starting to do as of late, you're gonna love Eye Eater. Check them out now before they explode. Next up, we have Jairus Johnson with Dragonborn, and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around this album. With all of the imagery this album brings, you would imagine this to be something like a power metal album or a folk metal album, and you kinda get that, but it's to a very, very small degree. This album is layered in modern hard rock, modern metal, experimental moments, industrial, modern electronic. It's a very strange album to someone like myself, but for others, others, they are clamoring all over this thing. In fact, the track that I have for the Spotify playlist for this week has over 20 million listens already, which I think says a lot. This must be a TikTok fascination. But with all that said, it is so cool to see the imagery going on here, going into more experimental yet somehow mainstream styles. If you want something that's very left of center of the normal metal and rock that you listen to, give this album a shot. Next is Nile with The Underworld Awaits Us All. And let's just be honest, Nile is gonna Nile. They're back with the most Nile sounding album yet. I mean, this is the brutal death metal, technical death metal that you expect from the band. And of course with all the Egyptian tropes that you would expect. But, especially in their post-Dallas era, there is such a proficiency to the band that really showcases how great the band truly is. They know how to get brutal, they know how to get technical, they know how to write, they know how to arrange, and excellent production surrounding all of it makes this one of the most satisfying Nile listens of the 21st century, and I don't say that lightly. Seriously, check this one out if you want to see how the soul of Nile has improved. And finally today we end with Octoploid, with Beyond the Aeons. This is a brand new entity featuring past and present members of Amorphis, basically doing early to middle era Amorphis. This features such great melodeath, but it really gets psychedelic and experimental and progressive in just the right moments. So I know this won't be for everyone that enjoys the middle era of Amorphis, but if you enjoy it like I do, you're gonna find something to appreciate here. And of course you're gonna find some guest appearances from past and present members of Amorphis, Swallow the Sun, Barren Earth, and so much more. If you like your Amorphis experimental, progressive, and especially psychedelic, you're gonna find something to appreciate about this album. Of course, it's rich and layered in melodeath, but it's nice to have things go left of center once in a while. Seriously, give this one a shot.